Hello Shapers, welcome to the today's special podcast with New Champions 2023. Today's podcast is very special because it revolves around the dream of every shaper, attending the World Economic Forum's Davos meetings. Each year, Forum organizes two meetings. First is Winter Davos, known as the World Economic Forum's annual meeting, and the second is Summer Davos, known as the annual meeting of the New Champions. Out of 10 to 15,000 shapers each year, only 50 shapers get the incredible opportunity to participate in these meetings. Today, we are delighted to have three extraordinary shapers on the podcast who recently attended annual meeting of New Champions 2023 in China. On today's podcast, we will try to know from each guest about their experiences, insights, and most important, tips for the next year's application. Joining us are Santosh Pandey from Kathmandu Hub, Nepal, Mohammad Hassan Dajana from Rawalpindi Hub, Pakistan, and Alina Statue from Cleveland Hub, USA. Welcome, everyone. How are you doing?
Having a wonderful time here. Glad to be with you with us, Gajanan. Thank you.
To kick the things off, let's start with the overview of the event. I would like to start with the most energetic person, Mohammad. Could you tell us something about the annual meeting of New Champions and what were your expectations before attending the meeting, and how did they align with the actual event?
So imagine you're sitting in front of a laptop. The deadline is midnight of Central European time. You were like, as any desi, you were like, I'll do it. I'll do it. And after you see it's just an hour left. And before an hour is left, you work on your application. And at the end of the form, you see there's a video. And you're like, ooh, there are 20 minutes and there's a video. You cannot do it on your phone. The file is going to be too large. So you improvise. You turn all your lights on. You wear white clothes. You sit in front of a white wall and you use your laptop. The first video, no. The second video, no. The third video, good. 10 minutes remain. Then you do a file converter and you convert that file into 10 MB. And then you quickly upload that Google Drive link. And you have made the Google Drive link open and you have copy pasted it before. Even before the video is there, the link is on the form. As soon as you get the notification at 3:57, the deadline is 4. You see 3 minutes to go, you submit and you're like, okay, let's see. A few minutes pass, a few months pass, and you receive an email from the Global Shapers community. And you see, okay, I see the email notification my phone is like this, I put it like this. I said, let me eat my food first. I don't want to sour the taste in my mouth if I don't get selected. So I turn it down, I eat my food, then I come back, I say, oh my God, congratulations. I just read congratulations, nothing else. And I go to my mom, I go hug her. I hug her twice and then I say, I'm heading to China. That was my happiness when I got in. Then the struggle starts. Then there's a visa. I know Pakistan and China have good relations, but the visa still requires a few bit documents. I get the documents. They were very good with the visa and they give us the visa. We sit on the first call. It's me, Santosh, Elena, 50 more shapers from across the world, very happy, energetic to be in China to see what's out there. Before heading there, we were like, okay, China is a country very well developed. Social media doesn't work there. Alipay, and there are some things called WeChat and Alipay. The conference is going to be something about entrepreneurship. Let's see what the Chinese have to offer. Before, I personally don't have much to go after, but I knew that the Chinese are good at what you do. I land at the airport in Beijing. And after clearing all the passes, I see a wonderful guy, very young, energetic student from Beijing, holding a WEF board. I go up to him and say, I'm here for the conference. He says, where are you from? I say, I'm from Pakistan. And he has a smile on his face. I said, why are you smiling? He said, Pakistan, China, brother countries. And this feeling of Pakistan, China, brother countries stood with me for the whole week. They have a word for it called Shundi, which is called brothers. So my expectation before heading there was, I knew China was developed. I knew China was way ahead of us. But the magnitude of development that they're undertaking is enormous. And there is so much thing we could learn from. So China gives us the best of both worlds. The European development model, very developed. And the Eastern family-centric values of respecting the people that come with you and like treating them as your families. So my expectation before was that of understanding a bit, but being a bit more oblivious, going there, seeing that they have developed and grown to such an extent that they could be used as a model for others to emulate. And that's the gist of it. Back to you, Gajanan.
Great. So
That
let's
was
move
the
towards,
best response ever. I just want to say, like,
Very detailed,
yeah,
actually.
it was great. Yeah.
let's move towards the theme part of the annual summit. The theme of this year's event was undoubtedly fascinating, and we have a successful Forbes 30 under 30 Asia entrepreneur with us today. Santosh, could you tell us about the meeting's theme for this year and what are the objectives of the event were?
Definitely, Gazanan. Thank you for hosting this. Uh, this year's theme definitely it revolved around entrepreneurship. Theme itself was, titled as entrepreneurship, the driving force of the global economy. And there were I think more than 170 plus sessions. It was really intense. The sessions there, the 3 days event, it was mostly focused on, there were six, I think, highlights, thematic pillars. One was rewiring growth. How do economy revive growth? That is one part. The other one was China in the global context. China being a big economy. We have different sessions around that. The third one was energy transitions and materials. So we had session, even one of our CPR was talking about, batteries. So that was the third one. And the fourth was safeguarding nature and climate. So mostly about sustainability, what's the future of, carbon competitiveness, and there were a lot of things. And the fifth one was deploying innovation. And the sixth one, which I'm mostly part of because I'm into retail business, it was about post-pandemic consumers. So, we're hopping around a lot of sessions. In 3 days, I think there were I remember I've been to almost all kind of sessions. All the six thematic areas. Mostly I attended sessions around digital transformation, SMEs, startups, but I was also there in energy and sometimes in innovation, uh, and much more actually. And maybe finding some break in between talking to sapers. I think that was some highlights. So this year's session, it was definitely around entrepreneurship, and we had innovators, entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, and people from tech industry over there. So it was really good event. It was one of the best session that I've attended. Yeah. Thank you, Gazanan.
So we have Alina statue from Cleveland Hub. Although Mohammed has shared his experience of application. Alina, can you share your experience and please give some tips for the new shapers who are interested to apply for next year?
Yes. Many of you may not have heard of Summer Davos because this is the first year it's returning since the pandemic. It's in its 14th year and it alternates between two cities in China, Tianjin and Dalian. Actually, the conference center we were in was built just for Summer Davos, which I had no idea. But they once these two cities were selected and they were in a long-term partnership, and then that partnership was renewed like right before the pandemic. Both cities have built conference centers dedicated for these for Summer Davos, which is really cool. But unfortunately, because I think just like with everything restarting in this new way, we all had found out through one of the Global Shapers monthly newsletters. I believe it was the February one or the March one. It was one of the two. And if you didn't read the newsletter, you wouldn't have known about the application. There was no other way to know. And there was only a week to do it. So they announced the application and you had a week. You didn't necessarily need a week to apply, as Mohammed Hassad mentioned. I also myself, I think the day it was due, spent like 3 hours before the deadline. My deadline, I think, was like 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So the application is just like Davos for anyone who's gone through that. It's like a WEF Qualtrics survey form. So they use that same kind of link for annual reviews, like the one that's, I think, still open now for any shaper to fill out about their year as a shaper. And it's pretty standard up until like you're filling out your name, what hub you're a part of, your top link profile. You also include links of any relevant like media. So if you've done a podcast before, so like I of course posted the one we did together, Coffee with Curators. If you've done any like TED Talks or webinars, things like that, they wanted to see kind of what you've spoken about before and what your public speaking skills were like. I think that's intentional because they chose some shapers to lead or facilitate sessions. There was no written portion from what I recall. I mean, there were maybe a couple brief questions, but it was pretty limited, like 50 to 200 words. I think the biggest struggle for all of us was the video because just like Davos, they ask one question and you have a minute to answer it. And so you're recording yourself. Like I used Zoom and recorded it, and I did it a bunch of times. And I even wrote a script and it was too long. Like my first attempt was, I think 6 minutes. And I was like, oh no, this is not good. It was far too long. And then I ended up uploading it as a YouTube link on our like Cleveland Global Shapers channel, but like unlisted. So you can't find it unless you have the link because I didn't want anyone else just like seeing my application video. And then I put that on. And interestingly, similar to Hassan, I did the video a few times. I didn't actually get it quite to a minute. It was a minute 28. And I was like, well, maybe they'll round down. So they must have rounded down. It was a little over a minute and I submitted 30 minutes late. And it was okay. So, I mean, not to say that you should do what I did, which is submit longer than a minute video and 30 minutes late, but I think they're a little bit flexible. This year, I think because there weren't as many people, I think, that applied as in years past. I can't recall the numbers, but I feel like it was maybe 1,000, 2,000 people, maybe less. Usually a lot more people apply for Winter Davos. But I would just say like maybe give yourself more than a few hours before the application is due, because I think that is the general story of all of us. Maybe working on a like script ahead of time, and like practicing that is good. But the most important thing is to make sure your top link profile is up to date because they will look at that. So like it's important to show that you're active in your hub. Like that's very much a criteria for them. So if your hub's page and projects are out of date, it's actually important for your hub to update its own page and to show like what projects you're a part of, and as well as your bio and everything like that. So just like being active on TopLink and making sure your profile and your hubs page is up to date is important for applications like these. So those are like my two takeaways. Don't do it last minute and update your TopLink profile.
Nice. So next question is about the key insights from the annual meeting of new champions, and it is for Mohammed. So World Economic Forum brings together some of the brightest minds from the various sectors. So Mohammed, what were some of the most striking insights or key takeaways from the discussion you attended, and were there any unique perspectives that challenged your thinking?
I'll add in a bit of context. So the annual meeting of the new champions that took place in Tianjin, it had more than 1,500 participants from more than 90 countries. The delegation from the global shapers community was of only 50 people. Who were the other 1,450 people? So the simple answer is some of them were world leaders. We had the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Prime Minister of Barbados, other world leaders joining. The Director General of the World Trade Organization was there. Many entrepreneurs and leaders of businesses were there. In the foundation dinner the first day, we were in the room with the chairman of the Ant Group. So we all all of us use Alipay in China, and Alipay is owned by Alibaba. Alibaba is owned by Ant Group, and that individual is in front of us telling us how leadership is. So who were these 1,450 people? They included innovators. So World Economic Forum has another part which is called Uplink. It is for anyone, and it's like an innovation platform in which they pull out challenges, and people innovating in those streams they can apply. So they had those innovators come in. Who are the other people apart from the world leaders? Business leaders, technological leaders, innovation leaders, people who are doing something. So I recall one insight. I'm sitting in the hall. I'm listening to Professor Schwab, and he introduces Premier Lee. And on my left is a professor of sustainability from Oxford, and on my right is the trade minister of Indonesia. So you learn from all of these collective individuals, and the arena in which we were having the conversation was set up in three ways. The first was the big, huge room in which they were like, there's one-way communication. One individual is speaking, you are listening. The second were large panels in which there were 4 people, but the rest of the people are sitting, and they have a session for about 40 minutes, and 20 minutes are for Q&A. So the third part was the hubs. These hubs were the most engaging conversation. The session in them would be for 30 minutes. They're like these close spaces, and they're like 5 hubs in total. And they would have conversation for 30 minutes, and about 30 people would be inside, 20-30 would be outside. And the speaker, if it's one speaker, would speak for about 10 minutes. If it's 2 speakers, they would speak for about 6 to 7 minutes. And they would just rapidly go this. Imagine doing decades of work and then presenting it in 6 to 7 minutes, and that's what they did. And after the session ended, they were like, questions. And we are in the room, very, very young people, very starting out in your careers mostly. And then there are the CEOs who bring on these intricate, expensive questions. What is this manner in which you're looking forward for the next 30 years? And those question and answers were the key learning experiences. So this is the formal session. The best thing about this is the informal conversation. One moment I was just tired. I went and sat down with in the Innovators Hub, and in that I'm sitting next with an individual. He asked me, "Who are you, young man? Tell me a little bit about yourself." I tell him about myself. Then I ask him, "Who are you?" Then he says that I'm an aerospace company CEO that based out in the US that subcontracts to the aviation industry. This is my 19th startup. I've raised about this much money in seed capital. This is the amount of money that I currently have, and this is what I'm here for. This is my card if you are struggling with anything. And I'm just walking around. There's a very famous book called Factfulness, and her author is just sitting right beside me, and we have a chat with that. So this is the formal session and these informal conversation. And the third part was the pitch. The Chinese know that the world works on trade and development. No politics, no any other. The only thing that was being done, it was pitching China as our economic and development partner, not something that do with us, but we have this much to offer. For example, I'll give you one example. In the center of the center where the conference hall was, there was like VR headsets. They're showing us this is our port. You can put on those virtual headsets and in real time, you can see what is happening at the port. At the last day of the conference, they took us to the port, and the port is net zero. The ship comes up, all electricity is net zero. All the things are electric. There's wind farm and each and everything. And in the audience were all economic and trade ministers and officials and business leaders from all the Central Asian country. I met the leader from Sri Lanka, from Armenia, from Azerbaijan, right? And they were pitching. And when we were traveling from the bus to the venue, to that station, to the Airbus station, they did not say, they gave us pamphlets, and an individual from their industry would come us. I'm from the Trade Development Authority, and this is what we have to offer, and we are open for collaborations and cooperation. So the key insight would be China pitched itself as an economic development, and for young people like us, if we want to work for our countries, we need to look at what us as a city, as a community, as a country have to offer to the world, and then be really good at it, and then pitch it continuously and show that we are good at it. They did that, and I believe, Gajanan, honestly, there were a lot of Chinese and people from that. If you're from China, you would have positive reflection from China. They took us to the Airbus creation manufacturing plant, and the head of it was a European, because Airbus is a European company. And when we were lifting up the stairs, I asked him very honest questions. They tell us a lot about China, that China this, China that, China this and that. What has your experience been working with the Chinese government? And he only said 2 words: can't complain, right? So that is my key insight. When you bring in trade, development, economy, then the world will be on your side. So that's, I hope that comprehensive answers some of your question. Back to Gajan.
Incredible, man, incredible. Next question is about the global shapers role, as you mentioned in previous question. Global shapers community plays a vital role in driving positive change globally. How did your involvement in the global shapers community influence your experience at the event? And were there any unique contributions from your group during the meeting? It's for Elena.
Yeah, sure. So I would say that the shapers that were selected for, there were 60 of us, I believe, and I believe 30 of us were from all over the country or all over the world, and then about 30 or so were from China itself because China has quite a few hubs. So they were from all different hubs throughout the country. Everyone was fairly active in their hubs. So almost everyone was going to had just come. There were a big group that had just come from Geneva, like straight from Geneva to Tianjin, which I had no idea because some just they just stayed in in Europe, especially if it was going to be far to travel back. So they just stayed before the AMNC conference. Or they were curators in the past, or they held other positions. So I think every shaper I met was fairly active in their hub and starting projects and initiatives. And a lot of those projects and initiatives kind of manifested into something that existed outside of shapers, like something they did personally or professionally. So that was definitely something that was common among the entire cohort. And I guess the formal piece that we brought in was the team that Mohammed mentioned tried their best to put as many of us in charge of sessions, whether that was being an expert and hosting a hub session. So Bianca Goebel from Melbourne, Australia, you mentioned the batteries. She did a "Will We Run Out of Batteries" talk, which was amazing. It was a hub session, and she gave a really great technical overview about battery chemistry and battery technologies and sourcing, like where all the different raw materials come from. And she does this on the side. This isn't her full-time job. This is like a consulting gig she does with another shaper who started a battery consulting firm. So she does green hydrogen as her day job, and then her part-time job is battery consulting, which is just amazing. So she did a really great session, and just the back and forth dialogue between different folks. That's the best part of the hub sessions, as Mohammed was saying. But then Aaron Sherwood, he's from the London 2 hub. He facilitated, do you remember what the session was called? It was oh, how do we trust our connected world? It was a lot about technology and AI. Yeah, so he led that session. And then we had Waverly Rose Brim from New Haven. She led a session on doctor AI, like how AI can make doctors' jobs easier. Yeah, thank you for that in the chat. So there were very dedicated roles for shapers, and they tried as best as they could to put as many of us in those positions. And then what was really cool is that the Director General of the World Trade Organization, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, I don't know if I'm saying her name properly, but she is the first African and the first woman to lead the World Trade Organization. We were able to have a shapers only conversation with her, which was definitely a highlight for me. And one of our shapers led that session. So that was Carolina from Stockholm, Sweden, and she did an amazing job. And then there were all these sessions that we had among both shapers as well as YGLs were there. So young global leaders were there. And then Uplink innovators, and then the Schwab Foundation social innovators. So there was a whole crew of the different sister communities of World Economic Forum. And so we met up a few times and did sessions with each other. So there was a panel discussion of what do shapers do? What do YGLs do? What do social innovators do? That was led by, I'm pretty sure the director of the World Economic Forum was part of that conversation at one point. And then Mohammed and I attended a nature and climate community dinner, which was invite only, which was super cool. And I think it has to do with the fact that both of our hubs have done work with the Climate Reality Project before, either received funding or participated in a incubator program. But Regina from Mexico, she was on a panel during that dinner talking about her work back home, working with a women's majority company focused on reforestation and restoration efforts in Mexico, and using AI and smart technology to inform that decision making. So that was really cool. So apart from all these official kind of roles people had. I mean, as Mohammed was saying, everyone there was so looking forward to just meeting, I think particularly young people. I heard in almost like every session the role of young people in the world today. And so every session I was in, there was always shapers asking questions. So during any Q&A, there was always a shaper introducing themselves as a global shaper with such and such hub. So I think that piqued a lot of people's interest to come talk to us afterward of like, hey, what's Global Shapers? So you definitely needed to know the pitch of like, what is Global Shapers community in 30 seconds or less? Which we had an orientation session in the very beginning to prepare us just for that, which was good. Like to give the history and what we do. But they were really like everyone there really wanted to learn your story and what your passion was and you know what you wanted to achieve in the world. So those small, intimate, like kind of impromptu conversations were, I mean, equally, if not more important. And just our presence there, I think with all the different sister communities, you could really see that we were part of the conversation, if not in a formal role. So that's my answer.
Mohammed, do you want to add something in it? Or we can proceed for the next question.
I think Elena has done a marvelous job in covering each and every aspect of it, and we can proceed, Kajana. Wonderful, Elena.
For the quick recap, we covered almost like all the questions, about the annual meeting of new champions, the theme of the event, next the application process, key insights, then memorable moments and experiences, most important global shapers' role in the event. Next, we challenges and opportunities for the global shapers. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you would like to share about annual meeting of new champions 2023? Any final thoughts or reflections from both of you? Yeah, Mohammed.
So for our global shapers colleagues, for it's good. It's good to go out globally and see what is out there, but it is built upon the work that you do in your communities first. So what would you take to these sessions? What would you do? Is this a trip? Is this something else? So for you, if you are part of the global shapers community, what I would really look to do is just consider it another application, another thing. Don't make it your goal that the only purpose and reason of me being in the global shippers community is to go to these events. These are consider them to be if you do well in your community, then these are ways and avenues to increase that work and scope. So go back to your hubs, to your communities, and every member that I saw that were part of the delegation, they had something to offer. They had something to offer, and it was not world changing or groundbreaking or something that has done millions and billions of dollars, or something very valuable for their community, for their people. And that voice, that perspective was what was needed in that room of 1,500 people. Do that. That could be in a place in Turbat in Pakistan. It could be in India. It could be in Kolkata, Mumbai. It could be in the US. Do something in your own community. Learn from it. See what else you need, where you could work from, and then come built upon this, apply to these conferences, and see what is happening into the world. I'll share with my examples. So I see a lot of the young people in the country that I'm from. There's a lack of hope. There's a lack of the future not being as bright as it should be. Opportunities like these give us the opportunity and avenue to see what the young people from the other parts of the world think. And what I saw was there was lots of hope. There was lots of positive optimism in seeing what is out there, whether it's generative AI, whether it's healthcare, whether it's technological integration, or just looking at the world at a different lens. And that's what I took back. When I came back, I told my hub, this is what I saw. This is what we need to work upon. I went to my other shippers from Pakistan. This is what I learned. This is what we need to work upon. So as a global shipper, don't consider your membership just to apply for this conferences. It's good that you get the opportunity and you should always apply. But the first and foremost priority would be working for your community, for your hub, for your people. No matter how big, no matter how small, that's not the question. Just doing something about it, learning from it, and then using these opportunities to increase your impact. That's my final thought. Thank you so much, Gajan.
That is really great. Yes, I would definitely echo all of what he just said, because I shared a lot of stories about Cleveland as a city and just like the types of projects we work on as a hub. Because I found similarities with other cities and like other leaders I met in their communities when it came to say like water quality issues. Because I live along one of the Great Lakes, so we're dealing a lot with water quality and flooding and things like that. So when I was having like environmental conversations particularly. And I would also say that some of what else did I want to say? What I found, so I would agree that I found the I think it's very energizing for people to go to conferences like these where there's such a diversity of thought and representation across the world, and you realize how similar the challenges are that everyone faces. And you could hear, it was funny, you could hear a little frustration with, say, like the COP conferences. Like I heard COP being referred to as a talk show, like that it doesn't really have like you're making pledges and commitments, but what are you really doing about it? And what I found fascinating is that like I didn't know this, but I learned in a session, the Climate and Nature and Court session, which actually Muhammad and I both attended, that the International Court in Hague is looking at like what do climate agreements and pledges really mean, and countries can weigh in on these opinions, and they're going to provide a legal opinion as to whether there is a legal duty to implement the NDCs, like your contribution toward emissions, which is pretty powerful. That like if that became like a legal binding agreement that the entire world needed to work on. And so it was clear that there was some like frustration and gaps. I think the other thing that interestingly I didn't hear getting talked about much was how like the wealth and inequality gap and like the rising cost of living is related to the climate crisis. Like those are linked. And that just might be because that like that topic wasn't represented. But I think like there was a lot of talk about technology and it's like use to like reduce costs and increase efficiencies, which overall is going to help with what we're struggling with today. But that cost of living piece still felt like kind of a gap for me that I think is still a challenge that people are thinking through. Because yes, we all need to be working on these different crises globally, but like we also still need to be able to make a living. And I think like that hasn't quite been figured out or at least fleshed out in this particular conference. I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, I would say the other thing is what was really great about our group is that we did this orientation session in the beginning, like I mentioned. So they kind of prepared you for giving that 30-second pitch about shapers, but also like Muhammad was posting in the chat, they really were like, take the time to really read through the entire agenda. Like it is quite extensive because there is a description of each session, but it was like really get a sense of what you want to attend both for yourself, but also for your hub. So like, don't forget about your hub and your community. Like this, you're representing your community at the end of the day, in addition to your own personal professional interests. So trying to balance that. And we had a reflection session at the end, which was really, really helpful. So we actually sat down as a Shaper community for like 10 or 15 minutes and wrote down our reflections on like what we were going to take back personally, but also what we were going to take back to our communities. So there was definitely that emphasis on you are representing more than just like who you are as an individual. You're also representing your community and you want to take those learnings back. So, yeah.
So you have covered all the points which are required to apply for the next year's summit. And I hope there will be a lot of like bunch of people will apply next year. Thank you all for sharing your profound insights, experiences from your annual meeting of New Champions 2023. The theme of entrepreneurship, the driving force of global economy, is indeed a vital topic, and it's inspiring to hear how it resonates with us as a member of Global Shapers community. We wish you all the best for your future endeavors and look forward to witnessing the positive change you bring to the world. And our listeners, thank you for tuning in for that special episode. And make sure to subscribe and stay for the more empowering content. Until next time. Yes. Do you want
Woohoo!
to do some informal talks now? You are free to
I mean, we
share.
can for like 5. Yeah, you can stop
Yeah, 5 to 10
recording,
minutes
you know.
max.
Yeah, we got time.
Actually, today's podcast is like full of information. It's a lot
Good.
of new things
I'm
for me also.
good. I'm
भाई
hoping it was
रिकॉर्डिंग बंद कर ले
helpful.
पहले इनफॉर्मल होने से पहले रिकॉर्डिंग बंद कर ले
मेरे पास बहुत सारे छुपे हुए चीजें हैं।